Welcome to Biblioventures, The Hobbit. Sorry, I wasn't ready. I was engrossed in our great new opening credits. In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down on or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. Welcome to Biblioventures, The Hobbit, Episode 1, Chapter 1, The Unexpected Party, from the Rosenbach Museum and Library in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I am Edward G. Pettit, and this is my co-host for tonight, Graeme Cheadle. Hi, Graeme.
Hi.
I have your name written two different spellings in my thing, and I stopped me for a second there.
That's right.
Are you ready to talk about this book tonight, Graeme?
I am looking forward to it.
Awesome. What are you drinking?
I have an ale today. This is I know my little plug. This is from a Phillips brewery, a local brewery in Victoria, British
Ooh.
Columbia. It's one of my favorites.
I have a Samuel Smith Old Brewer Tadcaster, the Taddy Porter, uh,
Mm.
from the oldest brewery in Yorkshire. I've
Oh
also got
wow.
their Nut Brown Ale, and I've got woo.
Nice.
I got a little Scotch too, so we'll see.
Hmm. You're prepared.
Maybe I'll get through all of it. All of you, if you want to share what you're drinking too, you can add it to the chat. Feel free to send me recommendations for cocktails, other drinks, non-alcoholic beverages by email. That's fine. I'd love to try some new things if you guys want to send them my way. But I had to pick the ales and the beers and all that because that's what they're drinking in this chapter. So I thought that needed
Mm.
that needed to stay with what I was doing. Well, um, and yes, thanks to Scott Banks for those opening credits. I thought they were absolutely fantastic this year.
Hmm.
Scott has created the credits for the last few shows that we've done, and Depleted Gazelles Tucker Christine for another fantastic theme song. Tucker does all the themes for our shows, Graeme,
Mm.
and
That was
and
cool.
seem to get better all the time. He was one of my co-hosts for the very first show we did, Sundays with Dracula, and he's a musician, so he
Oh
started
wow.
music for all the shows, and it's really worked. All righty. Thank all of you for tuning into this episode, all of you who have joined us again, who watch other shows, other Biblioventures, and anybody new. If this is your first Biblioventure, welcome, and have fun in the chat, as I see everybody is doing already. We bring our Biblioventures series to you for free, and there are many other Biblioventures series you can watch on our YouTube channel. If you'd like to make a donation to the Rosenbach or become a member, we do sincerely appreciate your support. And you can do this on our website, rosenbach.org. Your support helps us create programs like this and also care for our collections. We have a fabulous set of co-hosts who are going to do this series with me. And first up is Graeme Cheadle. Graeme is an educator based in Vancouver, British Columbia, the co-owner of an online teaching company, founding member and coordinator of the Grey Havens Smile, which is a Tolkien fan club in the Pacific Northwest, and a member of the Tolkien Society, the Marquette Tolkien. He is Marquette Tolkien Fandom Oral History Project participant number 324. I've never done that, and
Mm.
and I
It's
many people have
fantastic.
done it. Yeah.
Yeah, highly recommend it.
You can tell people what that is in a sec. And numerous other Tolkien fandom communities, and is interested in history, politics, sports, and building community. Something I think we do here with Biblioventures is build this reader community.
Hmm.
You are very welcome to this, Graeme. Thank you. Tell people a little bit about this history, the fandom oral history project that Marquette does.
Sure. So for anyone who doesn't know, Marquette University in Milwaukee is actually the home of a lot of the Tolkien manuscripts. The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit in particular, a few others. A lot of the other ones are, of course, at the Bodleian in Oxford, where Tolkien worked. But through an arrangement with a then chief librarian in the 1950s, who was kind of forward-looking and thought that this Tolkien guy was going to be a big deal. This library collects manuscripts and works by Catholic authors. So in the 50s, made a deal with Tolkien, and they basically sold his original manuscripts there at Marquette. And over the years, it's been a bit of a pilgrimage for Tolkien fans who are in the area of Milwaukee. And the current chief librarian there is a guy called Bill Fliss, and at the Rayner, I believe it's called the Rayner Libraries. And he started a project, I don't know how many years ago now, where he wanted to collect the oral history of fans from around the world of Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, and The Hobbit, and so on. So it's still active. You can arrange a Zoom call with him. He'll ask you three questions, so it's not that long. It goes about 3 minutes per person, and his ultimate goal is to get 6,000 participants, just like the 6,000 riders of Rohan in the book. So for the famous battle. So a few number of years ago, I set that up, and I'm number 324, and it's a fantastic project. There is even a brief documentary that has been made about it.
Oh, I
In
didn't
that
know
documentary, you can hear my voice for about 4 seconds. Um,
that.
so that was kind of cool too. And it's kind of a brief making of how and why this project exists. And I think he's up to about maybe up to 2,000, but he definitely still needs more. So any
Yeah.
Tolkien fans, I highly encourage you to take part in that.
I've always thought of doing that, and I just haven't,
Yeah,
proceeded. So perhaps
yeah,
maybe I'll just do it after the end of The Hobbit here, and
yeah.
do it that way. Somebody's asking me if there'll be smoke rings today. I will make an attempt at smoke rings when we get that part in the chapter. I cannot guarantee. I've never been the perfect smoke ringer, but I will make an attempt today. So remind
Hmm.
me if I forget. Graham, do you remember your first time reading The Hobbit?
I have a vague memory. I think the first time I read The Hobbit, it was actually read to me. So my mom read The Hobbit to me, I think when I was quite young, but I recall in particular I was a little older. She was reading it to my sister, my brother, and myself. When I'm the oldest of the three, we would come home from school for lunch, and she would read maybe a chapter at a time. It seems to me similar to the way we're doing this, kind of read a chapter and then and talk a little bit about it. I must have been, I don't know if I was 12 years old then. It was probably my second time. I think I'd already read it, but that's the memory that really sticks with me. And more recently, I've been reading it to my 7-year-old niece. So we've kind of come full circle of that. And that's probably the last time I read the whole through before this.
Nice. Yeah. It's great reading it out loud to someone,
Hmm.
child or adult. If you have an
Yes,
adult in your life you'd like to read it to, do that as well.
definitely, definitely.
It's always fun. Yeah, and it's so many people, it is their intro to this book.
Yeah.
And many people, even Lord of the Rings, that it was read to them
Hmm.
first. Um, so we're not going to read you the whole book. We're going to talk about it. I'm sorry you have to read it on your own, but I do encourage you, if there's someone in your life who you can read out loud to, or they can read out loud to you. It is a great activity, and it really. I mean, I don't want to say the cliche, it makes it come alive, but it really does. I mean, when you
Yeah.
hear the words out loud, it evokes different things in you than reading silently.
There's in general that's true, but there's something about Tolkien as well, I think, that really you really get an extra level. He was a poet as well as a prose author, and I think he had a skill of just putting these beats in that you can really hear, even alliteration sometimes
Yeah.
when you read it out loud. You might not notice when you're reading it for just for the strict content.
All righty. Well, everyone, let me tell you a little bit about how we're going to approach this in this Biblioventure series. It's more than just an opportunity for me to smoke and drink and talk about books. Yes, I like to do that, and it's great I get to do that. I have a show where I can do that from the Rosenbach. But in a sense, the approach I like to take is we're imagine it's 1937 or 1938 when it was published in America, and you're reading The Hobbit without the knowledge of the rest of the Tolkien legendarium. The Hobbit was a standalone book for
Yeah,
17 years.
yeah.
There was nobody read anything else about this, Middle Earth. Then I mean, I think Middle Earth's not even mentioned in The Hobbit, is it? The
I don't think so.
phrase Middle Earth isn't. Shire isn't. Although you
Shire
can
isn't.
call it
Yeah,
the Shire, that's fine.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not going to be that strict about it, but uh, the main focus will be we're talking about The Hobbit as a book in its own self.
Hmm.
Um, but yes, there is a larger legendarium that many of us are aware of. And looking back at The Hobbit, after you know all the Lord of the Rings and even Silmarillion and the great stories, that kind of thing, The Hobbit does reveal some interesting things about Tolkien's legendarium as he developed it. And even in the early years concurrent with writing The Hobbit. So he was
Hmm.
doing some of this stuff, but especially in the years to follow when he wrote Lord of the Rings. So at the end of every episode, we're going to have a segment called The Thane's Book, where we talk about things in The Hobbit which resonate with Lord of the Rings or the greater legendarium.
Hmm.
So that's how we're going to approach it. We're going to talk about the book during the beginning of the show up until the chapter, and then at the very end we'll mention those things. So if you're more interested in that stuff, well, you have to wait till the end. Or if
Hmm.
you don't want to know about that stuff, maybe maybe you haven't even read Lord of the Rings yet, and this will be your first. Well, then you can tune out then and don't listen to that stuff as we mention it, because there will be no spoilers. We will not talk about later chapters of this book or the Lord of the Rings. Today, we're only going to talk about what happens in chapter 1. Next week, it'll be chapter 2, and so on. And I ask you to please keep to this in the chat as well. Don't say like, oh, and then this means, remember when later this happens. There are actually people who are reading this for the first time.
Yeah.
And even if they know the story well and they've seen the movies or whatever, there certainly will be details that they won't recall or that they're unaware of. So in the Thane's book section, all bets are off. We'll just talk about things later, but that'll be
Hmm.
at the end of the show, so we can keep the spoilers to there if we even need to. All righty, that's enough intro. Let's get into the book. As we proceed, we'll talk about Tolkien's inspiration for the book, of course, how he came to write it, his life experiences. I'll share some images from the Rosenbach's copy of The Hobbit a little later as well. Um, but I figure we can throw all that stuff in as we go along, Graeme. Okay.
Cool.
All righty. First sentence, as I read to you, in the hole in the ground, in a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Well, there's an annotation we need to throw out right away, Graeme, right? Because that's the story Tolkien tell the story that Tolkien always gave about how he came to write this.
Right. So the sort of well-known, famous origin is that Tolkien, busy Oxford professor that he was going through some relatively boring work, grading student essays or student exams in Oxford, and he happened to find a blank page, and which is worth its weight in gold. Not a lot of opportunities, and it just comes up, and he just decides to look at the blank page, and inspiration strikes him, and he just writes down, "In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit," and that's the canonical origin of this whole thing.
And he told this story a few times.
Hmm.
Each time he told it to the press, and it was recorded. Um, uh, it t- Tiny details change in it, but it's
Right,
essentially the same story. But he didn't tell that story until 1955 for the first
right.
time. And it's a letter to W.H. Auden, poet, who also, Tolkien corresponded with, and Auden loved Tolkien's works.
Yeah.
And in that story, and in that he says, on the blank leaf, I scrolled in a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. I did not know why. I did nothing about it for a long time. And for some years later, I got no further than the production of Thor's map,
Mm.
when it became the Hobbit in the early 1930s. And then he says this again in 56 and 68 and 67. Yeah. And, so this is all in History of the Hobbit, which I highly
Mm.
recommend.
Yeah.
The John Ratliff book, if you're Ratliff, whatever, Ratliff,
I think
Ratliff,
it's Ratliff. Yeah.
Ratliff.
Yeah.
If you're interested in the early drafts of it and all that, that's all in here. But of course, he did begin this story, I think we can be pretty confident, as a story to his children.
Yeah.
And something that his children, and it's basically the older ones, John, Michael, and Christopher, because Priscilla was only an infant when he
Very young. Yeah.
this happened, but something they called winter reads, and like it was their winter break, and their dad would tell them stories,
Mm-hmm.
and it develops over a time, and then he starts writing it down, and they even ask him to write it down. They have Christopher's told stories about this, and Michael
Yeah.
has. But they also differ in detail sometimes. What year he started telling this, and it was the early 30s that we know. It was probably 1930 itself when he started doing this, if
Yeah.
not 1929, and uh, and then it just develops over time until and the book works. You can really tell that in this story too, because it's a book with a narrator recounting a story to
Mm-hmm.
young readers. I mean, technically a children's book, but there's so much rich detail in there, and it's told so well that you don't have to be a child to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Tolkien's very aware of that kind of thing. Um, we're also given then right after this some specifics about his house. Well, no, I'm sorry. I'm jumping right over it, Graham, because the whole idea that that it is a funny opening,
Yeah.
and it plays against expectations. Like it's not that kind of hole. We're not talking about animals, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, the fact that we get and that we get, I mean, we're living, even if you haven't read the book before, we're living in an era now, almost a century after this, right? And it's become such a cultural phenomenon. Just about everybody, I think, in the English speaking world at least, has an idea what a hobbit is. But in 1937, no one does, right? And it's just that there lived a hobbit, and that's it. Now, yeah, later, soon after, he does kind of briefly
He
explain
starts
what a
telling
hobbit
us, yeah,
was, but not in great detail, right? Just kind of a paragraph about their basic physical features and stuff, right? But it's just kind of like, yeah, and it was a hole, but it was a hobbit, but that means comfort, and that's kind of the
yeah.
key idea there.
And then we get this whole comfortable world that he lives in. The round door painted green. I meant to look this up and I didn't.
Mm,
The prevalence of round doors, and is this a kind of story convention, or is this
mm.
something that in a country, as old as England or a European country like that, you would see these things sometimes. If this isn't that it would be unusual but not unheard of. Because in my entire life, I never saw a round door, growing up,
Yeah, well,
around Philadelphia.
I think, I mean, I'm sure there might be some symbolism there, but I think of portholes, which are really windows. But
Yeah,
other than that, I mean, I've actually seen a talk one time when someone gave a talk on the physics around doors and on the practicality of them, and you need kind of this double hinge thing to really make it work because it doesn't really work with a single. It would be extremely heavy. It's actually kind of difficult to make it, but it's a nice fantasy element because otherwise, okay, it's in a ground. I guess most people don't live in a hole, but other than that, it seems very kind of 19th century middle class, except for this few little touches, like a perfectly round green door. It just sets it apart.
yeah, it does. And all the comfort. It's tiled, it's paneled, it's carpeted, it's polished. Um, he's very fond of visitors. And it's called, and he lives at the Hill.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
well, we'll have that. We'll have other mentions of that too. The water, the
yeah.
hill. This very simple nomenclature for this, you know, simple past age. Is what
Hmm.
we get the feel of. Even though there's things that we recognize here, there's also the idea going on that this isn't now. This is
Right.
somewhere in the past without him even having to say it's in the past.
Yeah.
And Bilbo is also a well-to-do hobbit.
Hmm.
And we even get his last we get his last name before we get his first name, right? Yes, he's a Baggins.
He's
His
a
name
Baggins.
his name
Yeah.
was Baggins. And they've lived there for a long time. They're very respectable, not only because they're rich, but also because they don't go on adventures and
Yeah.
do anything unexpected.
Yeah.
Uh, and he is, you know, he's bourgeois. He's middle class, conventional, respectable. materialistic in the sense that, the things he owns have value, and he recognizes that things you own have value, and there's
Mm,
value in material things. Um, and respectable also means conventional. It means no adventures.
hmm.
But that also is a hint that we are in a world where people can go on adventures, right?
Yes, right.
Which, like a fantasy novel convention, but it's also, that makes it different from a regular novel and from our real world, like a novel about modern people, right?
Mm,
This is
sure.
old romance tradition, adventure, Victorian boys adventure story, something that, like,
Mm.
this is a fantasy. This is a different kind of story than a normal middle class, bourgeois living comfortably person would have.
Yeah, and I think maybe the very first hint or foreshadowing there that there is going to be an adventure. The fact that it's kind of alluded to, he didn't go on adventures. I mean, I don't know if that's called a Chekhov's adventure, but that's that's a song.
Well, then he does tell us. He says, "This is a story of how Baggins had an adventure,
Yeah, right.
found himself doing and saying things altogether unexpected." And we get this, sum up of what it's about, setting up our expectations expectations for the reader, but also an interesting way that Tolkien approaches this, and that some authors do this, in that they tell you how to read their book.
Hmm,
Not
hmm,
all authors do this, but it frequently happens with books with narrators. You'll see this in Dickens all the time. In Dickens novels, he's
hmm.
frequently saying things that are letting the reader know, this is the kind of work that I'm writing, and thus this is the way you should be reading it. Um, and great authors, even if they don't have a narrator, can write in a way that they are teaching you how to read their particular work. This happens a lot in Ulysses. This is something I'm going to talk to Rob Berry when he's on as a co-host,
Hmm.
because he knows Ulysses very well. And some authors teach you how to read their books, and I find all these narrator the narrator addressing the reader and going through here, and then certain things that was just said are ways that the author is teaching you how to read it.
Yeah, and it's interesting choice too. I mean, right at the beginning, he may have lost the neighbor's respect, but he gained, well, you will see whether he gained anything in the end.
Yeah.
Kind of this aside to the reader, kind of
Yeah.
this implicit frame that's never really drawn out. Like, who
Uh-huh.
are you, Mr. Narrator, who's telling me this? Right? It's just
Yeah.
kind of there. And he or she, whoever it is, intrudes occasionally throughout the book, but not all the time, but every once in a while kind of comes back.
Hmm. Well, now he goes and he describes a hobbit. What is a hobbit? First talking about the mother. The mother, a particular hobbit. What is a hobbit? I suppose hobbits need some description nowadays, and this is defining the kind of people here. He says nowadays hobbits need some descriptions nowadays. Again,
Mm,
this is
mm,
this is about some distant past that you wouldn't know anything about, and that's why I have to tell you what it is. And then even they are or were, again, this is the past. They're smaller than the bearded dwarves, another, kind of legendary character,
right.
but they have no beards, little or no magic, disappear quietly and quickly, fat in the stomach, I guess, I guess you can be fat all over. I think it's interesting. He says fat in the stomach.
Yeah.
Like they have little bellies. And They disappear quietly and quickly. They wear bright colors, no shoes, feet with a lot of hair on them, and they laugh deep, fruity laughs, especially after dinner, which they have twice a day when they can get it.
Yeah.
So they like comfort and fun, and they like to enjoy themselves.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of really emphasized, really before there's any dialogue, before the story starts, right? That's just kind of a prelude for this character we're about to meet.
And there was a cut here, and I will do this as we go through it, because in the first edition, the 1937 British edition, 1930 U.S. edition, and then many printings after that, he had a line in there, and sometimes he'll cut lines out for the later,
Mm,
usually like the 66 version, or we'll have the big example for one of
yeah.
the chapters of the book where he rewrites a chapter. But he cut out a line here about them. He had originally written, if you're reading a first edition of the book, maybe one of you hasn't, and that's what you're
Mm,
reading. It says, there are or were small people or they are or were small people, smaller than dwarves, and they have no beards, but very much larger than Lilliputians.
Hmm.
Tolkien cut that out in the 66 edition, and you won't find it printed now in any edition printed now.
Huh.
Um, didn't think that that was a good idea to, refer to, another fantasy world that's not connected to this one at all. Even though Tolkien wouldn't even call Gulliver's Travels fantasy, he thinks that's not
Right.
fantasy. Uh,
Right.
and perhaps he's right, it's not. But yeah, he cuts that out. I think he doesn't want to, he doesn't like this is this world, not related to that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I totally forgotten about that. But I mean, there are some references which we'll see as we go along to things in our world now, freight trains and things like
Yes.
that. But he didn't want, I guess, a specific reference to
Yeah.
a specific work of fiction because Lilliputians didn't exist in this world, and he doesn't, I guess, doesn't want to take us out too much by
Yeah.
thinking about another real world thing.
Yeah. Um, Now we get a bit about his mother, the fabulous Belladonna Took.
Hmm.
I still say Took because I'm from Philly and I just say Took. It's
Yeah.
but it's but it should be Took.
Yeah.
Uh, and now it sounds like this sounds like a kind of traditional fairy story or folktale, right? It's the fabulous
Mm.
Belladonna Took, one of the three remarkable daughters of the old Took, head of the hobbits who lived across the water, the small river that ran at the foot of the hill. Long ago, one of the Took ancestors must have taken a fairy wife. I mean, now we're in a like it's almost like he starts the story three times actually. He started in
Right.
the beginning, and now here it seems like, oh, you're starting to tell us a different kind of
Right.
um, uh, I love that simple nomenclature for the places here. Later, when he writes more, especially Lord of the Rings, he'll everything will get named. But
Right.
here, it's more of this simple world that anybody can identify with,
Hmm.
and I find it really fascinating that he uses the phrase fairy in here, the fairy wife.
Yeah.
Um, and because of for Tolkien, I would think the confusion that could happen and people and the way they interpret fairy and that word and what they are, because Tolkien hated the cutesy little fairies of the
Right.
Victorian, the Cottingley fairies, that kind of thing. Fairies for him meant old world, otherworldly, strange, dangerous. That's the kind
Oh
of
yeah.
thing that he's referencing here, which would have been in true, fairy stories but had been changed all the time, changed over time, especially by the time he's right. The Disneyfication
Hmm.
of you know
He he had
of,
some choice words for Disney later on. Yeah.
yes, he did.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to know, wants to read about the kind of idea of a fairy world that Tolkien really pictured in his mind, he translated a Middle English narrative poem called Sir Orfeo,
Hmm.
Orfeo. That's really, really good story, and there's fairy abductions and enchantment in that, and that's a if you ever read that, it's been published and
Hmm.
it's a good way to get an idea of what he means by this kind of old fairy world. All righty. Well, Tooks go on adventures. They
Hmm.
are not respectable like the Bagginses, but undoubtedly richer. Of course, they go on adventures and they get treasure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Belladonna took married a Baggins, so Bilbo is both. He has his Took side, but he's also a Baggins, and now he's grown up, being about 50 years old or so, and settled down. In fact, apparently settled down immovably.
Mm.
But 50, you don't expect that when you first read this. So
Yeah. It's interesting. And unmarried, interestingly, as well. Which isn't really a point that comes up in this book per se, kind of is just unstated. I guess maybe in some of the later books it's remarked on in a different way. But yeah, and he's and then you also kind of find out later something a little bit more about hobbits life expectancies and so on. But
Yeah,
still, it's
that's
meant to
much
be
like
more or less
here.
human
It's basically
still.
this is the first
Yeah,
time you're reading this.
yeah,
First comes out. He's 50, and
yeah.
I don't even know if Tolkien has thought through the ramifications
I
of
don't think so.
Hobbit's
Yeah,
lifespan, all that kind of thing. No, he's a 50-year-old Hobbit. He is a
yeah.
middle-aged, respectable, unmarried Hobbit living in comfort, and
Very
that's
comfortable. Yeah,
the last person who is going to go on an adventure. So
right.
yeah, and if he was married, there's a whole other story. That's a whole
There's
other
a big dynamic there. Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
wouldn't work so well with this. All righty. Well, now the story begins again.
Hmm.
By some curious chance, one morning long ago in the quiet of the world. This is an opening of a story. Long ago in the quiet of a world when there was less noise and more green, and the
Hmm.
hobbits were still numerous and prosperous. That, idea that also that we're in a more natural world there. The past and is this, world is more green than it is now. And Bilbo is on his front porch, smoking an enormous long wooden pipe. This is the longest pipe I have. It's my wizard pipe. I
Nice.
don't have one that reaches to the floor. Um, but he is got to smoke the right pipe for the right lines in
Yes.
the story. He's smoking an enormous long wooden pipe that reached nearly down to his woolly toes, neatly brushed. And Gandalf came by. Gandalf. Um, Before I get to Gandalf, me let me say, because he's on his front porch, and this scene here at Bag End, this is when I thought I could bring in uh well, the pictures, illustrations from the story, which I
Hmm.
always want to talk about. And because Tolkien illustrated this book, he was a great painter illustrator himself, and illustrated this. And the British version, the first edition, has black and white illustrations. The
Right.
American winds up having color illustrations as well. And here is the Rosenbach's copy, because we have a first American edition
Hmm.
from 1938. This is how it looked. It's different from the British, and I'm going to share the British cover a little later in this episode. But this is our copy here, and it has this illustration he did of Hobbiton. Um, and I love the blurb on this too. Its place is with Alice and the Wind and the Willows. The Hobbit may well prove a classic London Times. Tolkien did not think neither the Alice stories nor the Wind and the Willows were proper fantasy stories. And think that's a different thing. Um, but but yeah, this book has this as the front cover, and then inside it has it's right here against the title page. I love that the American edition took this little line drawing from a later picture in the book of this bowing Hobbit. Even though yes, he has curly shoes, that was a mistake. The Tolkien's part, not actually the American printer. He actually put that on his Hobbit and realized later that oh no, he's not supposed to have shoes. But this is Hobbiton, the hill Hobbiton across the water. So it is named as Hobbiton. Yeah, and it's named as Hobbiton later as well.
Yeah.
But this is the hill that he lives on, right up here up top. You got the mill here. I mean, it's a beautiful pastoral, place. Um, you see all the Hobbit residences into the hill, and here's Bilbo's up at the very top there with his round door and all the windows looking out over the countryside, the gardens. Um, oh, there's a tree up there on the hill. We know what that is later. But it's a beautiful place, and this is where he lives. And was there another one I wanted to show at this moment? Um, yeah, because there's this illustration too that Tolkien had made himself. And this, again, it's a detailed picture of what, it looks like up top. So he's got a little bench here that he could sit out on in front of his door. I guess this is a bell pole here hanging down over the
Mhm.
door. Um, but this is how he's envisioning it himself. You don't need to envision it that way. You can envision it any way you want to.
Mhm.
He even curiously said once that he didn't think illustrations were good in stories, that they were better if people just read them and made their own pictures in their minds. And
Right.
I thought, dude, you illustrate all your own stories. Like, and have them published in the books. So
Right, right.
Hobbit especially. But maybe that's later. Maybe after the Hobbit, he kind of rethought that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, perhaps. He certainly had his illustrators who he liked more than others. He liked
Yes.
Pauline Baynes famously,
Yeah.
more than some others. Yeah.
Well, Bilbo smoking his pipe, and pipe smoking will become very important in the entire Tolkien legendarium, really. I mean,
Yeah.
it's important to him. He is a dedicated pipe smoker. And he really weaves it into here. That's in the Hobbit, people smoke pipes here and there, and it's mentioned. And uh, but it has some real importance. I especially think in later in the Lord of the Rings, but it all kind of begins here. And there is something about pipe smoking that when you do smoke pipes, you understand this kind of, you know, it's something that brings solace. Um,
Mm,
and it's like I always understand when they light up, and like there's a different thing going on when characters are smoking pipes
mm,
than when they're not. So
mm.
I don't know. I'll try to point it out here and there, but
Yeah,
I think it's really stronger in later books than it is
right.
in, even though it's still important to them. So we'll have to put a warning smoking on the thing.
Yeah.
Watching a show the other night, my wife and I, and it was like, and people were getting murdered in it. And
Yeah.
opening things was like the warning was fear, and I'm thinking like fear. How is fear a warning for a thing like that? Doesn't make any sense. It's smoking, and then I was like, there were people murdered, and you put
Yes.
smoking instead of murder. So there you go. There you go. That's me.
Yeah.
All righty. Um, Gandalf comes by, and then Gandalf, exclamation point. If you had heard only a quarter of what I've heard about him. I love that. I mean, direct address of the
Yeah.
reader too. Um, the reader it's not just a narrator telling you things and you know that it's a narrator. Now you're being addressed. Now you
Mm,
are present in the story. Um, it you read books and you're kind of taken away into a world and you can imagine yourself being there, but this is a way that a narrator can really do it in the sense that the narrator, it's I'm telling you a story, um that you're not just imagining being in that world, you're also in a world with a narrator sitting down telling you the story. And this isn't what most happens in most novels. One of the things that made novels, or one of the things that made novels unique in the beginning, um, was from other fictional narratives, is that they were stories about real people in the real world.
mm,
This is different from that because it's a fantasy world, but also they're not stories from a storyteller, and this is stories from a storyteller.
mm.
And you are brought into that world, especially brought in by being directly addressed.
Yeah, and it is interesting. I mean, as I mentioned before, like it's not made explicit how or what or like who is talking to us. And I know Tolkien later kind of really I might even say regretted this. He certainly didn't find it applicable to Lord of the Rings or appropriate for those kinds of stories, but I think it kind of works here because it brings you in a little bit. Our world or almost our world, but it's also a little bit different.
Yeah.
And he's not going to say who and what Gandalf is. He's just going to say Gandalf. He was, and then the quote that you just said, right? And if you've heard any of the things that I've heard, and later on, Gandalf says, "I'm Gandalf, and Gandalf is me."
Yeah.
Like it's not really defined for you, but he's an important guy.
Love that. I love that. We get a little we do know that tales and adventures sprouted up all over the place wherever he went. Um, And the description of him here is interesting. Um, Old man with a staff, a tall pointed blue hat, a long gray cloak, a silver scarf over which a white beard hung down below his waist, and immense black boots.
Hmm.
Now, um, there are various stories how he came up with the look and being inspired by uh Gan how he would how Tolkien was going to picture Gandalf, and one of
Hmm.
them is this postcard
Ah,
that
yes, the Burgess. Yeah.
Tolkien
Right.
himself had. Um, and it is Der Berggeist, and which means like a mountain spirit.
Yeah.
And that's who this is here, with his beard and his hat, his cloak. Um, it is a German artist. What's his name? Joseph.
Madlener, I think.
Yeah, Joseph. Yeah, Joseph Madlener. In Humphrey Carter's bio of Tolkien, he talks about this, and he says Tolkien had this postcard in 1911 and had written Origin of Gandalf on the back.
Mm.
But a lot of people don't believe that. Also because it's pretty much established that from Madlener's daughter that this was a painting from the later 1920s.
Right.
That doesn't make it still too late for this story. But it does then when you get some details wrong, then you have to wonder how many of the details you get wrong. Um,
Yeah.
and uh, and and so that, but also Tolkien specifically seems to have in mind ideas of Odin the Wanderer.
Yes.
Um, and here's an Odin picture from the illustration from the 19th century. This is more like that he's sitting on the throne. He doesn't have this isn't the one-eyed warrior. It's not the Marvel superhero
Right. Yeah.
that you might think. But also he was frequently seen as this. He has this wanderer guise as well with a staff. Here's a 19th century. This is a George von Rosen from 1886. The hat, the cloak. I mean, if you saw this, you would just think that, oh, is this somebody's illustration of Gandalf right away?
Yeah.
Because of all that we've seen with Gandalf now. Here's another one from 1876. This is Odin the Wanderer. Here's a spear instead of a staff because he would hunt with it, I think. Here he is again with a couple, hunting dogs that he has with him. This is the kind of, figure that Tolkien is really thinking of. And here is his very own illustration it's just that he had put together of Gandalf by Bilbo's door.
Mm.
And, the hat, this hat looks very much like a Merlin kind of hat here.
Yeah.
And the cloak and his staff. But the idea that it's more like Odin the Wanderer is confirmed in a letter. Where's my letters of Tolkien? In a letter 107. Let me stop the share here. I highly recommend the letters of Tolkien. There's a new edition, has even more letters in it.
Yeah.
And this is a letter to Stanley Unwin, the publisher, and he wrote, this is on the subject of a German edition of The Hobbit that he wrote in 1946. I continue to see letters from the translator. He sent me some illustrations that I fear are too Disneyfied for my taste. Didn't like this Disney way of thinking. Bilbo with a dribbling nose and Gandalf as a figure of vulgar fun, rather than the Odinic wanderer that I think of. I mean, he specifically said that I think of the Odinic wanderer when I picture Gandalf. And so that is so when we get that description of him, that's what Tolkien's thinking. But again, here's another weird thing from the 1937 edition, the very first edition. The description leaves out the staff, and it also says, what's ours? Ours, it says an old man with a staff. He had a tall, pointed blue hat, etc. In 1937, it was a little old man, little
Mm,
old man with a tall, pointed hat. Now, Gandalf's little, he's saying, but he's not little like a hobbit. We get that.
no. Yeah.
But he's not saying he's a tall man. And
Yeah.
he makes this change when he takes out little in 1966. Um, and I think what happens is over the time that he's writing Lord of the Rings, and you'll read some passages in that, and Gandalf is tall and
Yeah.
taller than everyone in the scene, and he realized that no, he's not a little old man. And but that again, that is a detail that gets developed later.
Yeah.
But at first, he is a little old man. If you're in,
Yeah.
so hey, it's 1938. He's a little old man. There you go. Lucky he's around hobbits and dwarves all the time. He seems like he's tall.
That makes him seem tall. Yeah. Yeah, I guess.
Um, and now Bilbo makes the mistake of saying good morning. And he meant it. It said good morning, said Bilbo, and he meant it.
That's nice.
And Gandalf though is questioning him right away. You have your copy handy too?
I do. Yes. Yes.
You could do some
Uh,
of these lines too. Do you wish me good morning? Go ahead.
yeah. Let's see. Oh, yes. What do you mean? Do you wish me a good morning, or mean that it is a good morning, whether I want it or not, or that you feel good this morning, or that it is a morning to be good on?
I mean, just like challenging the conventional right away, Gandalf is. Like, I'm going to be disputatious. I'm going to challenge you right off the bat because really, as we'll see as we go through this, he needs to shake Bilbo up.
Hmm.
Bilbo needs to make a decision to go on an adventure because for some reason Gandalf has chosen him. And he needs to, so his very first words to him are a matter of shaking him up. And And then Bilbo blows out a beautiful gray ring of smoke. I don't know if I can do that. No, I failed. Maybe I'll try it later.
It's quite a skill. I've never been able to get it. Oh, there's one.
There was
Yeah,
one.
there was at
There
least
you
one
go.
good one. Yeah, yeah,
They're hard to do.
yeah.
Well, you practice, you can do them. Practice your smoking, kids, then you'll one day be able to blow smoke rings like me.
Yeah.
Uh, Better than me. Um, he wants him to go on an adventure. Bilbo's, he's looking for someone to go on an adventure. We don't go for adventures here, Bilbo tells him. Um, and then he gives him another good morning. We don't want any adventures here. What a lot of the things you use good morning for. Now you mean you want to get rid of me, that it won't be good until I move off. And then and then he lets Bilbo know who he is, because he hasn't introduced himself yet. And you said that earlier. I am
I am,
Gandalf.
and Gandalf means me.
I love that. That is, after he's quibbled about the good morning thing,
Hmm.
well, I guess he's asserting his name. My name means exactly this. It's, it is unique. I'm not just anyone. I'm not just, you can't use it like you use good morning. I am Gandalf. That's me,
Yeah.
period. Um, and and Bilbo recognizes him as the wandering wizard that gave old Took a pair of magic diamond studs that fastened themselves and never came undone till ordered, and told tales of dragons and goblins and rescues of princesses, and had excellent fireworks, and then also was responsible for taking away many quiet lads and lasses into the blue for adventures and never be heard of again. Um, uh, so it kind of pulls Bilbo back to his bag. Like once, like, oh, adventures, all this wonderful stuff, and then like, I'm not, Bilbo's really back and forth this whole chapter. Well, and for the whole book, really. Um, his
Yes.
hook and
Yes.
bag inside are in
It's a
constant conflict.
common theme. Yeah, that tension. Yeah, I like how we get introduced to Gandalf here as clearly a character of some renown, even though it says that they almost forgotten him. clearly they hadn't forgotten him because Bilbo's welcome is not the Gandalf who did this and that and this and this and this and other thing. Like not the other guy. Like it's clearly the same guy. They know who he is. And I love how he ends it and says, "I had no idea you were still in business." And he goes, "Where else should I be?"
Yeah. It's if a wizard is a business. It's like,
Like I was going to retire.
yeah, it's like a profession.
Yeah,
Because that's Bilbo's world, right? He
yeah,
is this very conventional, middle class kind of person living in this village, and you have a profession, or you don't. You're like Bilbo, you just have money.
right. Yeah,
But his profession is telling stories and fireworks and giving magical things to people. Um, and then Gandalf kind of really twists his words here about adventures. I will give you what you asked for.
yeah.
I didn't ask for
But
anything.
I was trying to think.
And he doesn't. And I went over to text. I'm like, oh wait, but did he with that? No, you can't. Like he didn't ask for an adventure.
Right, right. He says,
But
but you asked for my pardon."
yes. Yes, you have twice now. And I'll give it to you. So yeah, he mentioned adventures twice, but he didn't ask for them. But he is and this is his way of, getting into it. And then this scares the hell out of Bilbo. And he's like, okay, well, come anytime, come tomorrow for tea, like goodbye. And he's like,
He sneaks off into his house, but again, I love it showing that he knows a little bit about what Gandalf is because he doesn't want to be rude. Wizards, after all, are wizards, so there's a little bit of menace there, maybe
yeah,
implicit threat.
yeah, be careful. It is a wizard. Well, they the next day he forgets all about Gandalf,
Somehow.
and just as he's about to have tea, there's a tremendous ring on the front doorbell, and he opens it thinking it's Gandalf, and it's a dwarf with a blue beard tucked into a golden belt with very bright eyes under a dark green hood. I love the colors here, and it's something we forget that goes through most of the dwarves, or at least
Yeah,
some of them. Like
yeah,
you even get like a blue beard,
yeah,
which is not
yeah,
what you expect. That
yeah,
he's really in a world, especially in this first book that he's writing in this world, that this is a more fantastical, fun world than
yeah.
what will happen later as he continues to write in stories of Middle Earth. Um, and uh And then we get it's Dwalin. It's Dwalin. It's not Balin. Did I say Balin? It's Dwalin at your service. And Bilbo bows and then I love the narrator intrusion here. Like, and what would you do if a mighty
Yes.
dwarf came and hung his things up in your hall without a word of explanation? Um, uh, Again, bringing the reader right into it. Well, now the hijinks will ensue as
Yes.
as they all arrive. And next is Balin at your service. Um, he's a very old, and he's got a white beard and a scarlet hood. And uh and Bilbo's worried that, oh my gosh, he says they have begun to arrive. And Bilbo's like, oh, what do you mean they? And then
They.
but his thought is, I'm gonna run out of cakes.
Yes.
He's still in his ordinary world that he needs to get
Very
shaken
much.
from. Uh,
Yeah.
and Balin asks for not tea, but a little beer, which I have,
Yeah.
and I don't mind some seed cake if you have any. Look, I have seed.
You actually have some.
My wife made me a seed cake today for the beginning of the show,
Oh, that's amazing.
first episode. Really good too.
Oh,
I mentioned to her, like, oh, I forgot. I meant to see if I can get some seed cake. And she made it for me today. And she's not a
that's
baker. She doesn't bake stuff. She's good at pies, but she doesn't
uh-huh.
do cake usually well. But it's actually really good.
That looks great.
All right. So I'm going to talk with my mouth full on the show.
Ah, that's fine. I love I love this whole sequence for many reasons, but I think something you've just alluded to, like
But talk
Bilbo,
while I eat. Go ahead.
yeah, Bilbo's main concern here, despite the intrusion and what would you do if a dwarf came to your door, his main concern is that he's not being quite polite enough, that he forgot to say the right thing, that he's going to run out of cakes, and of course, we have here a world. So it's not quite the way a dwarf would show up to our door, because the dwarves, of course, are mythical in our world, but they did exist in Hobbit, in the Shire, which we find out later. But Bilbo is not astonished that a dwarf exists.
Yeah.
Just that he doesn't know this particular dwarf, and he's a little bit surprised that they're coming into his house. But his concern is not that these sort of ancient world medieval creatures of Norse legend are real, but that they're imposing on him, and he's unprepared for the politeness and etiquette requirements that a good host should provide. It's just the very beginning of his confusion, but it's hilarious that that's what's concerning to Bilbo.
Yes, and that dwarves are a part of his world. They're an
Yeah,
ordinary part of his world, the outer world, not
yeah,
in
yeah.
his little.
Presumably they've never come in his house before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, now they all start to arrive. Two more, and it's Philly and Killy, and they have blue hoods and silver belts and yellow beards. Uh,
Hmm.
Philly and Killy, and then they all arrive. Well, then a whole bunch of them: Dory, Nori, Ori, Owen, and Glowin, or Oin and Gloin. But I think it's Owen and it's later Owen and Glowin, but actually when he was writing this, it may have been Oin and Gloin because there's something one of his kids, Michael or Christopher, wrote something where they kind of rhymed Owen and Glowin with a oin sound. I can't remember what
Yeah.
it is now,
Yeah, there's something that reminds me of, so I can't remember the exact
but
story.
it's Owen and Glowin now.
Yeah.
Purple hoods, gray hoods, brown hood, white hood, but no more beard,
Colors.
at least.
Yeah.
So, and then there's some called for ale, some for porter, one for coffee, all of them for cakes. There's a big jug of coffee. It is, and then four more arrive, more dwarves, four more, and Gandalf, and they come falling in. So it's just all comic hijinks going on here. Bifor, Bofor, and Bombor. Um, uh, he does seem to mean that when you have rhyming names, that you're either brothers or you are closely related.
It seems, yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Philly and Killy are definitely brothers. Dwalin and Balin are. I think Dory, Ori, and Nori and Ori are. Yeah, I think Owen and Glowin. I think Bifor, Bofor, and Bomberly, one of them is a cousin. Maybe Bombor's a cousin. I forget. Well, because we just find this out at some point in the book. But
Yeah.
uh, and the great Thorin Oakenshield himself, he's a little haughty, and he has obviously his hood is the sky blue one with a long silver
The
tassel.
tassel. Yeah.
Oh, he's a little more dignified. And then we get Bombor was immensely fat and heavy. Like we don't get any of the others
Anything else?
info about any of the others, but again, he has established this one dwarf is a big fat dwarf, and there'll be the comments of this throughout the story that this is a comic convention.
Right.
This is the Oliver Hardy of the dwarves,
Hmm. Hmm.
and they've all and with especially with the hoods and the beards, they have different identities, but it's not the same. Like it's not like the Disney Seven Dwarfs, and which Mitch Tolkien hated, and
Yeah.
that Disneyfying of old stories to make them cute and palatable. But that kind of very specific, sneezy, dopey,
Yeah. An attribute. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
going there with this
No.
kind of stuff.
No.
That's the kind of thing that Tolkien really dislikes. Um, but at the same time, he tries to make them distinctive in some way. So not that you could ever tell them apart, right? Like, hey, what color is Dory and Nori's hoods? Like
Well, yeah.
that. Some people do.
You
Somebody
can,
out there in watching the show, well, like, of course I know all their color codes.
I'm sure there are.
Awesome.
But Thorin is clearly becomes a very distinct character and kind of separate from the rest. And I'd say later on you might get a little bit of that maybe with Balin, but for the most part it's hard to tell them all apart. But they are they do have some of them don't get enough lines maybe to really distinguish them as characters. But there's kind of a few subgroups amongst
Yeah.
their team.
All righty. Before we get into a little more, let me take a moment here in our mid break to thank you all of you for watching this episode. As a nonprofit organization, the Rosenbach Museum and Library depends on the generosity of friends and supporters like you to keep programs like this free and accessible to thousands now of fellow biblioventurers worldwide. I hope you will consider supporting the Rosenbach and this show by donation, which you can do at our website, or by becoming a member. Membership gives you free museum admission, discounts on programs and courses, even the online ones, early access to registration. You can learn more about how to become a member on our website. We have a great many programs and courses at the Rosenbach, including many online. You can still register for most of our online reading seminars, which are beginning in the next few months. Of a special interest to some of you might be a course that we're running on Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials series, led by Kristen Poole. Be a chance to read the Dark Materials series with a great professor and learn all about John Milton's Paradise Lost connections to those novels as well. I know that's going to be a big focus of this class. That starts soon. You can register at rosenbach.org. Other seminars coming up include Shakespeare's Green Worlds with Sir Jonathan Bate, The Art of Literary Biography, Samuel Johnson and Boswell course, Ulysses Weekly, taught by Rob Berry, who you all meet soon, is one of our Hobbit co-hosts. I think he's in the chat right now. Stendhal's The Charterhouse of Parma, Dickens's Bleak House, Brief Wonders, Latin American Short Fiction, The Medieval T.S. Eliot, and Anne Bronte. If you are looking for even more Biblioventures, our Sherlock Monthly show airs once a month, covering all the Sherlock Holmes adventures, one story at a time. You can watch all the previous stories in that series and all Biblioventure series on the Rosenbach's YouTube channel. There are shows on Dracula, Frankenstein, Jane Eyre, Pride and Prejudice, Sherlock Holmes, Pickwick Papers, Jekyll and Hyde, Christmas Carol, and now The Hobbit. We also have a group page for The Hobbit on Facebook that you can join and chat on, share pictures of your books, and then talk about whatever you want about The Hobbit. It's been a lot of fun so far. Thanks to everybody who's been posting there. And you can always write to me. If you want to send me an email, I love to hear from the audience. I'm happy to chat with you via email as well. All righty. Back to our story. Thorin and, Gandalf wants no tea. No, thank you. A little red wine, I think,
Yes.
for me. And for me, says Thorin. So another way that they're a little different. Like we're not like the common guys drinking the beers here. We like a little red wine, a little more dignified for them. So I thought about having wine too, but it was just like, how many drinks am I going to have here?
Yeah.
I got scotch later too. Like, but
Mhm.
that's a little too much. I like that wine too. And Gandalf says, and just bring out the cold chicken and pickles.
Yes.
That's just a funny line to begin with. Bring up the cold chicken and pickles. I love that line. But if you're reading the 1937 or 38 version, if you're reading these early editions,
Yes. Yeah.
it says, bring out the cold chicken and tomatoes.
Mm. Or
Uh,
tomatoes, perhaps.
Yes, Tolkien did not like it when he didn't like it when he discovered, like, oh, that's an anachronistic thing because
Yeah.
tomatoes aren't grown in England until the late 16th century, so I don't want to bring that in. Of course, with potatoes, you can't get around it.
No, unfortunately.
He calls it taters anyway, and tobacco he doesn't get around.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Although in this they'll say tobacco in The Hobbit. He doesn't come out with the term pipeweed
Right.
until Lord of the
Till
Rings.
later.
And it's only called pipeweed in Lord of the Rings.
That's right. Yeah.
But usually he likes to cut those things out. And this was a case where he's like, tomatoes doesn't sound right. That's not the kind of thing that, should be here. So he changed it to pickles. But he's not completely strict about that, but he does it sometimes. So I'd rather have pickles than tomatoes anyway. So
With cold chicken? Yeah.
definitely. Make a little sandwich. Bilbo's getting annoyed. Confusticate and bebother
Be
these
bothered.
dwarves.
I love that word. Those words.
Yeah. And it's part of the fun of this scene. And what we're getting reminded of, in this is that this isn't a ponderous, serious, fantasy tale. It hasn't been since the start. It's got a very light touch to it, and it's funny. And that's, I think, not just because, oh, I need to entertain the kids. It fits this story, and makes it much more enjoyable to read. Um, the dwarves, but not Thorin nor Gandalf, clean up everything. And they
Yes.
and they and then again they have this really fun nonsense song that just helps to set this tone here. Chip the glasses and crack the plates, blunt the knives and bend the forks. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates. Smash the bottles and burn the corks. I mean, they just have this fun song, of course, freaking Bilbo out. Um, and and they, and they sing their song while they clean up. But Thorin,
It's
go ahead.
it's just it's a great moment because it does progress the plot, but also it's the very beginning, and we're gonna get another one briefly, of song intrusions and poetic intrusions into the narrative. And it's a funny song, and it never explains how they composed it spontaneously.
Top of their head, of course. You don't
And
do
they
that. Come out with a song.
and it rhymes and it's perfect for the
Yes,
occasion,
of
it's in perfect meter. And it's and we're get as I say, we're about to get another one, a longer one, which makes more sense that it was more of a traditional dwarf song, although still one very, very timely in particular to their circumstances. So dwarves at least apparently use that as a cultural element to kind of say what's going on in verse.
And it really sets the tone for that's the first song in this
Yeah,
book. And
yeah.
we'll have several as we go through here. And I like that the real fun nonsense one is the first one that we get. Um Thorin, while they're cleaning, because he's Thorin, he's not going to do this. This is what I would do too. I would sit my feet up in a fender and everybody's cleaning up. So
Yeah,
I get to play
seems
dad.
formal.
I get to play dad. Yeah, you guys clean up. And he's smoking a pipe, blowing the most enormous smoke rings. Well, let's see if I can do it. Gandalf is also smoking and sends up smaller smoke rings. And it says, from his short clay pipe. So I got a
Yeah.
little clay pipe
Oh, nice.
house. So not what you expect in the long Gandalf pipe.
Yeah. Well, maybe he's got to tramp through the wilderness. He's got to have a nice, convenient
Yeah.
one somewhere. Yeah.
But this is a very, this is a proletariat. This is a working man's pipe right here.
Yeah.
It's,
Right.
clay pipe and a common pipe for the past too. Obviously,
Mm,
when at one time all pipes were clay,
right.
and but that's what he's smoking. And I don't know if I can get any smoke rings going with this one. We'll see.
Hmm.
Um, and his smoke ring would go green and come back and hover over his head.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. It's hovering over your head a little bit.
A little bit, little bit. All right, I'll practice more. Um, and then I love this little touch here in the dim light. It made him look strange and sorcerous.
Hmm.
Setting a little mood here that we've got going on. So now we've had the fun song and the silliness, and now we're going
Hmm.
to get a little bit serious here. They bring out all their instruments, um, which is also fun too, that they all, oh yeah, it's my instrument. Like they've all brought their instrument.
I love that they all have instruments, and despite their implicit plan, which we see in the next few pages, none of them have brought a single weapon with them.
You don't bring your weapon to the burglars. That's for later. Um, they and in spite of that, like some of them are like ancient, early medieval set
Hmm.
instruments. But then he also has viols and clarinets.
Clarinets.
Surprise me because they're later. They're like, I don't know, 16th, 17th century, something like that. So
Yeah.
I was surprised that he didn't change that at some point. But the drums, the flutes, they seem to work. The fiddles, they seem to work.
Start a
Uh,
little jazz number.
and the harp. Thorin has a
Yes.
beautiful golden
Yeah.
harp that he strikes, and they begin to play. And Bilbo, so sudden and sweet that Bilbo forgot everything else and was
Mm,
swept away into dark lands under strange moons, far over the water and very far from his hobbit hole under the hill.
mhm,
And then their deep-throated singing of the dwarves and the deep places of their ancient homes, and it's the far over the misty mountains cold to dungeons deep and caverns old we must away your break of day to seek the pale enchanted gold. um, when I read Grant, I don't know if you, when I read Tolkien, whenever
mhm,
they come up to a song, I
mhm.
quick go online and I find somebody doing it and
Who's done it? Yeah, yeah.
I
There are some
play
really
it.
good ones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then I play
yeah.
it. There's there's a Tolkien ensemble or something like that.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
There's a few
yeah.
different people to do them. Or I loved I have that old Mind's Eye um, Hobbit from like the late 60s or something. I
Okay.
can't remember what it was. I have it on cassette and came in a wood box
Hmm,
um,
hmm.
on these cassette tapes, and it's a really good dramatization of The Hobbit. It's
Hmm.
the old BBC ones are good too, I think.
Yes.
But this one had a great. I haven't listened to it in a while. Um, uh, but I remember them doing this song and this like deep, sonorous.
Hmm.
Just really puts me in the mood. So whenever I read Tolkien now by myself up here, because I'm not reading it out loud to someone, I
Right.
put on somebody doing the music and then just listen
Mm,
doing it.
mm,
Takes
mm.
time, but it really works. It's really nice to do.
Yeah. There's a, I mean, like you said, there are many these days. There's a great group called Clamavi de Profundis, and they do some religious music, but they also do a lot of Tolkien music, and they have these very, very kind of deep voices for the dwarves. It's really cool.
Yeah. They their song is about, it's about their, art, their metal and gem craft.
Yeah.
These are like dwarves from Germanic folklore,
Yes.
they're not only live in caves in the earth, but they're the blacksmiths and they mine for gems and gold. They have their own world. And then the song talks about this the dragon attacks them. Then dragon's ire, more fierce than fire, laid low their towers and houses frail, um, and and destroys it all. And then we must away your break of day to win our harps and gold from him.
Mhm.
Um, and I love this about the Hobbit. Do you have that as they sang? Read that few sentences there.
Is this right? Oh, yes. As they sang, the hobbit felt the love of beautiful things made by hands and by cunning and by magic moving through him, a fierce and a jealous love, the desire of the hearts of dwarves.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
That's, that, well, and we'll, that's something that's going to come into play throughout this, story. The desire of the hearts of dwarves. Go on.
Um, then something Tukish woke up inside him, and he wished to go and see the great mountains, and hear the pine trees and the waterfalls, and explore the caves, and wear a sword instead of a walking stick. He looked out of the window. The stars were out in the dark sky above the trees. He thought of the jewels of the dwarves shining in dark caverns. Suddenly, in the wood beyond the water, a flame leapt up, probably somebody lighting a wood fire, and he thought of plundering dragons settling on his quiet hill and kindling it all to flames. He shuddered, and very quickly he was plain Mr. Baggins of Bag End under hill again.
Yeah, this journey, like, oh yeah, this world. I would go on an adventure and then wait a minute.
Dragons may be a little too much.
Yeah. And he goes from the Tukish side comes out, but then the Baggins
Briefly,
side
yeah.
just
The
reasserts
fire,
itself again.
the dark and the fire and the shadows in the room. And I mean, Thorin even said, in fact, all the dwarves say, we like the dark.
Yeah. What about a little light? We like the dark, said the dwarves.
Dark
Dark
for
for
dark
dark.
business. Yes. It's
And
so
I
great.
love it. It said the dwarves. Like they all say it at
All
once.
of them.
Oh, we like the dark. Um, that maybe that sounds like a saying too, dark for dark business. Like they would all know that. Like that was a
Yeah.
phrase that they
An
use.
idiom or something. Yeah.
Um, and then Thorin goes into his proper speech here. We are not, uh, Gandalf, dwarves, and Mr. Baggins, we are not together in the house of our friend and fellow conspirator, this most excellent and audacious hobbit. May the hair on his toes never fall out. All praise be to his wine and ale. Bilbo Baggins was, and then Bilbo is wagging his mouth in protest at being called audacious and worst of all, fellow conspirator. So, and then he's taught, and then we're going to start on our long journey. Perhaps none of us may ever return. We may never return. And then that's Bilbo can't kind of
It's
handle
just too much.
it. Yeah. At may never return, he began to feel a shriek coming up inside, and very soon it burst out like the whistle of an engine coming out of a tunnel. And there's an anachronistic, simile that he leaves in.
Yeah.
But it works because I think in this case it's a reminder for us that it's a narrator telling us the story. This is not a narrator in Bilbo's time. This is a
Right.
narrator for present day readers. And, we're hearing the story now. So it's okay if the narrator has that kind of, anachronistic simile about a train whistle that the hobbits wouldn't have then. And Bilbo has a fit. uh, Gandalf struck a blue light on the end of his magic staff. I like
Yes.
that. And then he falls on the rug, shaking like a jelly that was melting. Kept calling out, struck by lightning," over and over again. Uh, and Gandalf just says, "Excitable little fellow."
Yes.
It's funny, queer fits, but he's one of the best, as fierce as a dragon in a pinch. Um, uh, that's, I mean, the comic sensibility, I think, of Tolkien is really, really a play here. Really does this well.
Uh, I love that. I mean, this is one of the funniest parts, I think, of this chapter, and kind of presages a lot of similar jokes to come. But it's also funny because, despite the fact that Bilbo is clearly terrified, Gandalf just kind of brushes off. Oh, he's a little bit excitable, and the dwarves aren't even like, are you sure? I mean, should we bring? I mean, they do have a little bit later. They
Yeah,
kind of start questioning a little bit, but they're not like, what are we doing here? Like,
yeah.
Gandalf, are you sure about this guy? And then he just kind of like uses his authority to like convince them.
We also get the story, the old Took story, the old Took's great granduncle Bull Roarer.
Yes.
He could even ride a horse. He was so big. He charged the ranks of the goblins of Mount Graham in the Battle of the Green Fields and knocked their king, Golfimble's head clean off with a wooden club. It sailed 100 yards through the air and went down a rabbit hole. And in this way, the battle was won and the game of golf invented at the same moment. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just brilliantly fun. I mean, I think that's hilarious.
It's a great in joke.
Um, and but yeah, no, they Glowin right away says, he looks more like a grocer than a burglar.
Right.
And built and this that is what is really, it
He's kind
gets
of kind of provokes his pride a little bit, and all of a sudden, despite his fear, he's like, well, hold on now.
it's the Took side had won. It
Yeah.
says the Took side had won. He suddenly felt he would go without bed and breakfast
All
to
of a sudden,
here.
yeah.
Um, that many a time afterwards, the Baggins part regretted what he did now. And he said to himself, Bilbo, you were a fool. You walked right in and put your foot in it. But he does it nonetheless. This is,
Yeah.
he has to come in and say that, no, I could do this. Tell me what you want done, and I will try it. If I have to walk from here to the east of the east and fight the wild wereworms in the last desert, like he's now in their world. He's now
Yeah.
not in the Baggins world talking about cakes and do I have enough cakes. Now he's using this
Hmm.
even language of an adventurer, right? Oh, and he also says I have no signs painted on my door. It was painted.
Yes.
But he learns, he did. It said, it wasn't just a G. It was burglar wants a good job, plenty of excitement and reasonable reward. Yeah, that's how it usually read.
There
You
must
could
be quite
say
the symbol.
expert treasure hunter instead of burglar if you like.
Hmm.
But Gandalf had told them that there was a man of that sort in these parts looking for a job at once, and he arranged for the meeting here. And Gandalf says, of course, there's a mark. I put it there. And then he goes into, he says, well, Bilbo's going to be your 14th, and he bullies them. He's like, if you don't want a 14th and you want to be unlucky with 13, great, I'm out of here. You're done. But he says, uh, uh, I chose Mr. Baggins, and then a little bit later, if I say he is a burglar he is or will be when the time comes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, the first line before is, I have chosen Mr. Baggins, and that ought to be enough for all of you. Um, I don't think it's enough for the reader, for me. Like,
Mm,
don't you wonder, like, why did you choose Bilbo?
yes.
It's
Yes.
something that I don't know if we ever get a specific answer, but we get answers for this because it's a question that I think will arise constantly in
Yeah,
the book is, why is Bilbo on this adventure? Why did Gandalf single him out? Um, and something to keep in mind as we go through this.
I agree. Yeah. I think there's two dimensions to that. I mean, the first is just treating this book as a kind of, yes, a children's fantasy adventure story where you need, I think, a likable and
Yeah.
maybe identifiable protagonist to go off on this
But in
adventure.
that
So,
case, they're usually accidentally involved, you
well,
know?
true. Yes,
But
right.
here
That's usually how
he
it happens. Now,
specifically
he
chose it.
does choose him, right? You're right. But I guess for the purposes of the story, you need that to happen somehow, and then you can let it play out. And obviously, Bilbo's going to predictably kind of grow and adapt to his role. But then in the kind of wider legendarium, which looking back later, even outside of this book, you do get some kind of answers later, but like literally decades later in Tolkien's own conception of it as well. So it doesn't exist yet here. So I don't know if you had asked Tolkien in 1937, but why did Gandalf choose? Well, I don't know exactly what answer you'd even get.
I don't know. I think you might get an answer, but I can't. But we can't talk
You
about it
can't
now.
say exactly what it is yet. Yeah.
All righty. All right. Now we get the map. Oh, I love this.
Yes.
I love maps. I think all books should have maps, and I mean like even like regular everyday novel, like should just
Yes.
have maps. Like any
Just like
map, I
the
love to
suburbs.
look at.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like, oh look, this is where they live, and this is their neighborhood. Like
Yeah.
anything. I love a
Yeah.
map in a book, and this map is even more special. This is Thror's map. Thror, your grandfather, and it's a plan of the mountain. And here, this is it in the copy, the
Yeah.
Rosenbach. This is in the back. It's on the rear end papers. It was supposed to be on the front end papers, and then the map of Wilderland in the back. But it didn't really matter.
Hmm.
And here it is. And in the text, it even says, a variation of mine. This one has, look at the map. It's a footnote. Look at the map at the beginning of this book, and you will see there the
Hmm.
runes. Different books have different kind of references to it. There's usually a reference here to look at a map in the book that
Hmm.
changes the different editions. Um, and and Thorin's not, he's like, yeah, I know where Mirkwood is, and which is over here, where I guess down here where the spiders are. Here's the Lonely Mountain where they're going to. There's, Smaug up there, the dragon marked in red in the mountains. The other like here is, oh, this is in one of the manuscripts at
Uh-huh.
Marquette. And this is an image you can find online. This is in their collection. This is a little piece of a manuscript from the story, and then the first probably drawing by Tolkien of what the map would look like, Thror's
Mm.
map. The hand is still there pointing with the information that the runes under it telling about the information about the door. Um, I love this, Graham, because instead of north and south,
Yes.
it is north is the Big Dipper or the Great Bear constellation, and south is this is a star, I think.
Yeah.
It's one of the star, like a southern star, and here's maybe the mountains of that are over across the sea, in in the elf land
Hmm.
across the sea,
Hmm.
and this is the moon or the sun rising over some kind of castle or structure in the east. Um, but
And
not the traditional north, south,
no,
east, and
but
west
it's
you get on the later maps. So
right. But even in the later maps, like the one you had before, north is not at the top. It's on the left side. So
yeah,
if you because of dwarf custom, it's not made immediately clear here because it's in runes anyway.
yeah.
But you eventually find that out when you see other maps.
And then this is the map. Tolkien drew this map for insertion in the book and then realized they didn't want a vertical map that would go on a page next to it,
Hmm.
which is what he originally envisioned.
Hmm.
So that's why he had to redraw it to be a
Uh-huh.
horizontal map for end papers. But here you get the idea. Look, the dragon in red that they mentioned in the
Ah,
text. This
yes.
is what he meant. The dragon was in red. Here's the secret door over here, the finger pointing to it. And on this one, we don't get the secret moon letters. But what he did is on the back of this map. This is why he wanted it as a single map in the book.
Right.
Because there's secret rune letters that he wanted when you held it up to the light, you could read them. So sorry, that's a spoiler for later, but like there is like an interesting thing that he did with this because you can see these other rune letters on the other maps that are in the book already. So that's why it's not that much of a spoiler. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there you go. So these are his maps. And then yeah, so this is the one that I think was in the British first edition, and they do have the dragon in
In
red.
red. Yeah.
Yes. And these, don't look in the middle under Desolation of Smog. Don't look there. You can't see that right now. But you can see this over here. And then they translate it in the book now that it says rusty on my runes. So it says 5 feet high, the door and three may walk abreast. THTA, which is Thror, son of Thrain. I think Thrain, son of Thror. I'm
Yeah.
not sure which. They're all their names start to confuse me
They're
now.
all TH. Yeah.
But these are Old English runes. These are
Yes.
Futhorc runes, Anglo-Saxon runes that Tolkien used. I think he only uses them in The Hobbit. I don't think that he ever used. Maybe he does for the cover of Lord of the Rings as well. Um,
There may be one part in the Mines of Moria.
yeah.
Yeah.
But he likes using these kinds of runes. And you're right, he does in the Mines of Moria. And this is the cover of the
Mm.
first British edition with his
Yeah.
beautiful
That's so
illustration,
nice. Yeah.
all that illustration that he had done for it. And around the edges of the book
Yes.
are runes, and they start down here in the bottom left, and it reads. I have it written down because I can't read runes that quickly. It says, "The Hobbit." Or there and back again, being the record of a year's journey made by Bilbo Baggins of Hobbiton, compiled from his memoirs by
Hmm.
J.R.R. Tolkien and published by George Allen. This is down this on the left corner, the left side. Published by George Allen and Unwin Limited. So I even got the publisher's name in there in runes. Um,
Yes.
but that idea, now, not that anybody knows this, like if you could read runes in 1937,
Yes.
you were probably, a professor at Oxford. Um, but it does seem that he has literally put into and it's not on the American edition, um, uh, but he already has in place that what we are reading is a, not is a compilation by Tolkien from these memoirs. So there is an author, J.R.R. Tolkien, who is translating
Yeah.
things. So that, in a sense, could be why then you have a narrator. That could also explain why you have, similes from the modern day. Um, that it is not a tale told by someone in the past. It's told by someone now about the past, and that it's on the cover. He does the same thing on Lord of the Rings, I think.
Hmm.
Um, but here it is on The Hobbit. So that's just such a great cover. So I think you can get a facsimile edition. I think they sell
Yeah,
those.
they do. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have one? I
I
want to.
don't. I would like to get one. I don't have one, but yeah, yeah, I would like to get one.
I should get one. Um, we also get the first. This is where we get the first mention of Smaug. Um,
Yes.
Not in the song, but here. Um, Old Smaug had lived there long enough now to find out anything there is to know about those caves. And then we get the reading of the inscription, the runes, and then it's a secret door because it's closed. It looks like the side of a mountain. Dwarves can make these kinds of things. I mean, we have to have this kind of explained to people, like how could there be
Right.
a door? He wouldn't know. And Bilbo asks this, and
Yeah.
very much as a
Yeah.
stand-in for modern readers
For
too.
the readers, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And the map also went with a key, a small and curious key. Oh, and here it is. I have that too. Gandalf's got it all. He's got his bag. Like, oh, wait a minute. I think I have an old map here. Oh, this is the map.
Look what else I got. Yeah.
Key. Um, you want to go in Gandalf's pockets? Let me tell you. You want to
I guess
find. You're gonna find. He's got some stuff
who
in
knows
there.
who knows what else he has there? Yeah.
Um, and and then Thorin talks about, we need to challenge that. Well, we should go in and we need to go in here and challenge the dragon. And Gandalf says, this is interesting, I think. He says, that would be no good. Not without a mighty warrior, even a
Right.
hero. Tried to find one, but warriors are busy fighting one another in distant lands. And in this neighborhood, heroes are
Yeah.
scarce or simply not to be found. Swords
Hmm.
in these parts are mostly blunt, and axes are used for trees, and shields as cradles or dish covers, and dragons are comfortably far off and therefore legendary. That is why I settled on burglary, especially when I remembered the existence of a side door. And here is our little Bilbo Baggins, the burglar, the chosen. The fact that we get 3 times mentioned that he's chosen by Gandalf is significant. Like it
Mm.
just has to ring with you. Gandalf chose him, so that's why I keep thinking, like, why did you choose him?
Hmm.
Selected burglar. Um, uh, this greater world, there's warriors out there, but they're all fighting in other places.
Yeah.
Um, because, hey, hi, why don't you go get a famous warrior? Like we're in a
Yeah.
fantasy land.
They're
That's
out there.
They exist, don't they? They're off doing other things. Well, Bilbo tries to be very businesslike about it. This is the kind of Baggins side in him coming out. All the same, I should like it all plain and clear.
Yes.
Puts on his business manner. Wants to know what they're doing, and Thorin then gives the whole story in greater detail. So we
Yeah.
get these kind of, like we get a song, a story in a song, and then we get a map, and then a couple pieces of the story, and
Then a proper explanation.
now that we get
Yeah.
the whole story that Tolkien gradually leads us into it. It's not just, explication right off the bat. Let me tell you a
Right.
story, and then the whole story, then you learn everything. He leads his readers to it in pieces, and I think that makes it read so much better. And he's
Mm.
one of the reasons he is so. It's one of the reasons why he can write an entire meeting, a chapter about a meeting,
Yes.
a
Council of Elrond.
conference chapter in Lord of the Rings, and have
And
it
it's
be
one of the most interesting
so exciting because you get, like, he gives you pieces, and
the
he
minutes.
one
Yeah.
leads into them,
Yeah.
and it really works. So because this is what we have here, it's a meeting, and then you're getting different pieces, but it leads to this whole big story about the dwarves, and they built these great halls in the mountain, and the gold and the jewels, and there was a king under the mountain that was his grandfather, and Thror was the grandfather. Thrain is his father, right? Am I right, or is it the
I
other way
think I
around?
think that I think that's it. Because Thorin says my grandfather was Thror. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it. Yeah, yeah,
Thror's the grandfather.
yeah.
There was
And
a
then
Thrain
Thrain.
the Old, who is like
That's true. That was
older
my far
ancestor.
ancestor. That's right. Thrain the Old. Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
But then Thror is his grandfather, Thrain is his father, and his grandfather Thror was king under the mountain, and then the town of Dale was next to it.
Hmm.
The dragon stole everybody, and then here's where we get this great information about dragons and Smaug. Um, Dragons guard their plunder as long they steal gold and jewels, and they guard their plunder as long as they live, which is practically forever unless they are killed. and it's very it's like this is almost business like too. They usually have a good notion of the current market value,
Yes.
and they can't make a thing for themselves, not even mend a
No.
little loose scale of their armor. Um, there were lots of dragons in the north in those days. Now, I don't want to get into the even later today in our Thane's book
Mm.
in a little bit. We're not going to get into more greater ramifications of dragons in this legendary world. We have because we'll hit Smaug later. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
we have time in this book for the dragon, so we're definitely not going to hit that later today. But I do like the setup originally of this um, world that we're in and what dragons are like and very specific things about them. Um, the dwarves were cast out of their kingdom and now they have to wander around. Dale was ruined, everybody's dead and gone, and now they earn their livings as best they can, even sinking as low as blacksmith work or even coal
Mm-mm.
mining. I mean, this is from a people who are mining, gold and jewels and creating beautiful things. And but we still mean to get it back and bring our curses home to Smaug. Um, that is their goal. Their goal is they have two goals: get the treasure back and bring their curses to Smaug, like defeat him
Yeah.
in some way,
Vengeance.
hurt him in some way. He doesn't necessarily kill him because I'm sure even they think like we can't kill a dragon.
Right.
But they want to make him suffer for stealing and they want to get their treasure back. Doesn't even, it's not even like we're going to reclaim our kingdom. We're going to be king there anymore. We're going to get the treasure
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
and make him suffer
Somehow.
for it.
Yeah. That's all they really say. Yeah. Hmm.
Well, Thorin wonders how Gandalf got the map to begin with. And then we get a little history
A little
of
more exposition. Yeah.
them. Your grandfather Thror was killed, you remember, in the mines of Moria by Azog the Goblin. Not in the 1937 or 38 edition. Moria was named, but Azog comes up later. And
Mm.
that's because Tolkien had later since come up with him,
As a
in
character.
the
Right.
appendices in Lord of the Rings. So, now
Right.
and he adds them later. But Azog the Goblin had killed his grandfather, and his father, and his father got the map. Thran, your father went away on we get very specific, 21st of April, 100 years
Yes.
next Thursday. Which I just find I don't think there's any significance in that beyond that it's just
Yeah.
funny.
This is a very specific reference. Yeah.
And then your father gave this to give to you. Your father gave me this to give to you. He couldn't remember his own name when he
Mm.
gave me the paper and never told me yours. So Gandalf's just had this for I don't
A
know how many
while. Yeah.
years. Thinking like one day I'll find this dwarf that it belongs to. Um,
It's
uh,
important. I have a feeling.
and he says, I found him a prisoner in the dungeons of the necromancer.
Hmm.
Thane's book later. We'll talk about that.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Thorin is like, what were you doing there? So we know that in this, we know this is a really dangerous place. And like not even Gandalf the wizard is supposed to be in the dungeons of, of the necromancer.
And
Um,
they all shudder and shiver even at
yeah.
the mention.
Even Gandalf only just escaped. Gandalf only just escaped. Um,
Mm.
and and Thorin's like, well, we should think about the necromancer, and Gandalf's like, oh, no, 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 no. He is an enemy quite beyond the powers of all the dwarves put together.
Hmm.
And they could all be collected again from the four corners of the world. So this is not something that you need to even, think
Think
about.
about right now. Yes.
But it's also the idea too that like they're going off to kill this dragon or get their treasure from the dragon. But there are other more dangerous things out there.
Oh yeah.
This is a big world. Um, so that's really interesting. Somebody in the chat, I just happened to notice this.
Hmm.
I wish I could follow the chat as we do this, but somebody says Gandalf is a suspicious character. Um, and I like, especially on your first reading of this, if it's 1937 or 38, I wonder, Graham, do you trust him right off the bat, or would you think that there could be something else going on here? He has things that he's not supposed to have, and he has information, and he wants to get these people involved to do this, and it all seems like we're not being told. He's not telling us the whole story, right?
There are some questions. Yeah. I mean, it's this whole chapter is I guess a little bit less so as you get through the chapter, but it's certainly at the beginning. It's very lighthearted. It's very kind of humorous, and Gandalf is just kind of introduced as a known character by the other hobbits, at least by reputation.
Yeah.
But he does seem, and it's a little bit difficult to separate what we know later for those of us who have read the other books, but um, he does seem to have his own agenda at least.
Yeah.
And that's something that kind of continues throughout the book, right? He is deliberately mysterious at points, and not necessarily to deceive anyone, but just because he's got his own thing going on. And it does seem more and more, but even here a little bit, that he's helping them not just because he's a good person, but because he's got something else going on in the background.
In when Glowin first challenges him early on about,
Hmm.
about choosing him, a text says Gandalf, he scowled so angrily at Glowin that the dwarf huddled back in the chair.
Yes.
And when Bilbo tried to open his mouth to ask a question, he turned and frowned at him and stuck out his bushy eyebrows till Bilbo shut his mouth tight with a snap. I mean, like
Yes.
he's
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 got a
got
power.
and early
Mhm.
on we heard, wizards are wizards after
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
So be
It's not
careful,
just fireworks.
guy.
Yeah.
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 But he's not a necromancer. At least we don't
No.
think he is.
No. No.
And that's a I love that he uses that word. It's a shame that he couldn't find there is no kind of Germanic rooted Old English word for that
Something
kind
like
of
a
figure,
dead razor or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he
Yeah.
comes with necromancy. It's the Greek. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
necromantia, like dead body divination oracle. So
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
baby, basically like a black magic, an evil magic kind of person.
Right.
It's it's the right word to choose, rather than sorcerer,
Yeah.
because he's described earlier as sorceress.
He looks
Gandalf, there's
sorcerous.
something
Yeah.
sorcerous about him, but that
Hmm.
wouldn't be good for someone that you're really saying is an evil person, because that just kind of sorceress means just fortune teller.
Right.
Um, uh, but uh,
Mm.
but there is some evil out there in the world besides just dragons.
Yes.
Um, The Bilbo then comes up with a plan.
Yeah.
Well, I think we go east, have a look around, look at the side door. Dragons must sleep sometimes. Sit in the doorstep long enough. We'll think of something. Um,
Anyway, I'll give you breakfast before you go.
yeah. Before we go, Thorin says, aren't
Yes.
you the burglar sitting on the doorstep of your job? And for breakfast, I like eggs with my ham and, fried, not poached. And so Bilbo's still torn in this world a little bit, and goes to bed. He did not one thing he did make up his mind about was not to bother to get up very early and cook
Yes.
everybody else's wretched breakfast. The tookishness was wearing off, and he was not now quite so sure that he was going on any journey in the morning.
Hmm.
But he hears Thorin singing overnight, right? Give me those last lines.
So let's just see
Far
where it
over the misty
starts. Oh,
mountains.
yes. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day to find our long forgotten gold. Bilbo went to sleep with that in his ears, and it gave him very uncomfortable dreams. It was long after the break of day when he woke up.
I like that. Long after break of day. So I guess he didn't wake up in time to go. All
He
right, we'll see.
he decided, right? I've never mind actually. It sounded cool last night, but maybe not.
Somebody in the chat wrote Gandalf as gaslighter. And then somebody wrote, cook your own breakfast. Yeah, so we get this and this first chapter now. This is this whole battle and with inside Bilbo. It is his Took side, his Baggins side. which is going to, we know which is going to win out, but you know, but it's about that kind of battle going on within him and setting up his whole experience for this whole journey. As someone who would be very much like an ordinary person, like the readers, who now is going to be cast in extraordinary circumstances,
Hmm.
along with all these other people. So, all righty. Let's get on to the Thane's book and talk a little bit about some greater resonances. So, if you don't want to know things about what happened in Lord of the Rings or the Greater Legendarium, this is when you hit stop and then come back later or something. I don't know. But the Thane's book, and I've called this segment that, was a copy of the Red Book of Westmarch, which is Bilbo's book, the book that Bilbo wrote and began by Bilbo about his story. It was continued by the other hobbits, so it contains the whole story of the War of the Ring, and then some other material. But the Thane's book was added even more about the history of the elves and Middle Earth. So it's probably the most complete version at that time,
Mm.
of all these, tales. But it's not the, like, there are things that never make it into the Thane's book, but that's, getting really, we do know that this book existed. It was a fourth age scribe put it together. His name was Findigal.
Yeah.
I thought about calling this Findigal's Corner, but I thought Thane's book would be better.
Mm.
And Findigal is the scribe who copied the Red Book of Westmarch and included Bilbo's translations from the Elvish. So
Right.
hence that's the theme, everybody. um, and that's one of the things I want to talk about is, Graeme, is the whole idea of the Red Book of Westmarch. We're getting it.
Mhm.
We're getting the beginning of the Red Book of Westmarch, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's that. I mean, that's that. This is a giant topic, and there's scholarship done on this, right? But the question of the frame narrative keeps coming up again and again for Tolkien through pretty much all his imaginative work, and I don't think in fact, I would even guess that most people, casual fans of The Hobbit and even The Lord of the Rings, probably don't pay a whole bunch of attention to that because they're used to books just being presented to you as books or fiction, and you just enjoy them and that's it. But the way he kind of places it in, creating this whole um, uh, fictional history after the events of the Lord of the Rings, which we have then received through Findigo, through the scribes of Gondor, eventually to us, right? Just in the appendices of the Lord of the Rings. So only a few people even read and carefully think about that anyway. But for him, it was something that he felt like he needed to do. The runes that you read before, all
Yeah.
those kind of things. It's not just a story that I, J.R.R. Tolkien, thought of, but I've translated or rendered it or I found it somewhere, and I'm just telling you what it actually says. It's
Yeah.
fascinating for such little attention it actually gets.
I broke out the scotch for the Thane's book. This is a special thing I got in Edinburgh at the Bow Bar where there were only 158 bottles of this that
Oh,
they bottled.
oh
So
wow.
I can't drink it too fast. Look, I already drank over half of it. It's like ridiculous. I had stopped drinking.
Well, over
But
a
it's
while, I'm sure.
it's a space side,
Mm,
whiskey. It's so good. Oh my
oh,
God.
nice.
I almost wanted to stop talking and just drink. But anyway, yeah, yeah, and it's even hinted at in the runes around, that I
Yeah,
mentioned around that dust jacket, that like this is, and he's got these layers of this story that create this frame of it, that it's always Bilbo wrote a story and then and it all ties in. I mean, but you don't learn this whole frame and what it all is until the appendices
yeah.
of the Lord of the
I
Rings
mean,
and
years
how he
later,
puts
almost
it
20
all
years later.
together.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, the but yeah, it's the Hobbit that Bilbo writes, and then the Lord of the Ring, the War of the Ring story that the other hobbits then write.
yeah.
Frodo and Peregrine, I think maybe
I think
wrote
so. Yeah,
this.
Frodo and Pippin. I think.
Um,
Yeah,
that they're putting that, and
and
Sam
Sam, of
writes it
course. Yeah.
too. But then there's also all the other stories about the translations that Bilbo is putting together about the elves and that. So there's other stories within the great tales that Tolkien had imagined for this legendarium, all
Hmm.
get in there, and then we read someone from someone from now had to Tolkien had
Yeah,
to translate all that old material and to create these stories for us.
yeah.
So So Bilbo doesn't write in English, first of all.
Right.
He
Yeah.
writes in whatever language the hobbits speak.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and all those little layers that, once you're finished the Lord of the Rings and Silmarillion, you read all this other kind of stuff, and then you go back, there's all these kind of resonances there, all these kind of things that hit and that jump out at you. But again, it's after you've got the complete knowledge, and then you can go back and see these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Something I find fascinating about reading this now is, and even I mentioned just that little touch that he had to even go out and edit it about Gandalf being a little old man,
Yeah. Yeah.
is that he's not, this is like not quite the same. He's a lot like him, but it's not quite the same Gandalf from not Gandalf the Gray. I'm not talking
Yes.
about Gandalf the White
Kind
even,
of the wide.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
like he's not even quite Gandalf the Gray. There's something a bit different about him that, a bit more kind of, I don't know, like just some wandering, mischievous wizard kind
Yeah.
of character.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Don't. It's important to remember what Tolkien had in mind, or may have had in mind when he wrote this or started even telling it to his kids, right, in the early 30s, and certainly by 37, like what we know of who and what Gandalf is in Lord of the Rings, which you never even fully get until arguably the Silmarillion, the last chapter of the Silmarillion, kind of understand his fundamental nature. Tolkien wouldn't have had that in mind yet. So he couldn't have written him exactly as
Yeah.
this veiled angelic messenger, later. So he's kind of a figure of folklore, Tolkien's version of and twist on it, but he's just, even for Bilbo, he's just a wizard. That's a known thing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily what they are, but just that they're a class of beings.
And when you find things in here that then later get developed, you have to remember that he doesn't know this then. Like the necromancer
Right.
is Sauron
Yeah.
in Dol Guldur
Right.
in Mirkwood, kind of becoming like a being again because he had been
Yeah.
dissipated,
Right.
and he has to kind of, take form again. But he didn't. He told when he wrote the story, like there is no
No.
Sauron in his imagination.
No.
Like he doesn't have this character that we get in the Lord of the Rings.
No.
So he takes these little details about Sauron or about the necromancer and then ties them together later.
Later. Yeah.
And even that thing like Gandalf says, "Oh, he has to go away over the hill and across the water on business."
Yeah.
Something that he mentions like that's, or when he, like we know what those kinds of things are later.
Right.
Meeting with
And
the
and
White Council, going
yeah,
and trying to get in
all
and
those kind of important geopolitical, geostrategic,
yeah,
machinations he's doing. But at the time you read this book, um, even in the next few chapters to come, he kind of vanishes, and I think some readers are kind of, where does he go? They need him, but of course Tolkien couldn't have what was already clearly a very powerful character be with them because he would just solve all their problems for them, right?
hmm
And the whole point, character growth and Bilbo discovering his abilities and so on. You can't just have this, you find out later, this Maya, sort of
yeah.
interceding all the time, right? So he has to be doing something. And yeah, the necromancer was just a throwaway line. Tolkien did already have this concept of the character called Thu, in the first age and so on, but he wasn't the same guy yet. He hasn't become the Sauron of Lord of the Rings yet. So he always kind of stitched this back later. And the extent to which Tolkien meant the Hobbit at first, and clearly later the Lord of the Rings, but the Hobbit at first to be part of his private mythology with the Silmarillion material and so on is somewhat up for debate. I mean, John Ratliff kind of thinks he did to some extent. The general kind of accepted view is that he didn't and he just did it after the fact. But he does at least put these little references in
Yeah.
that allow him, just for his own reference,
Yeah.
just for his own, pleasure, really, that maybe are kind of connected.
Well, that's the key. They're not references yet.
Right.
There are
They're in
details that he
references. Yeah.
makes into
Internal.
references
Right.
later that
Later.
become
Yeah.
references later
That's it.
when he
Yeah.
develops that story further. And because yeah, this is like if you know that Gandalf is, a Maya from, it's and it has, one of the rings of
Yeah.
like he doesn't. He
Right.
doesn't in the
At the
Hobbit.
time, he clearly doesn't. Yeah. He's not acting like that.
But not knowing any of that stuff about him does, I think, lead you to read him as a different character, and
Yeah.
even as either more dangerous or not quite the kind of, angelic superhero,
Right.
he kind of becomes
Right. Yeah.
important. So, and he's not
Yeah.
that way to other characters.
Yeah.
They can, he'll of course scare them right off the bat, but they will
Yeah.
challenge him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thorin especially will challenge him right off the bat. So,
Thorin is clearly a very self-important dwarf, as I
yeah,
think it says. Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of things we could talk about dwarves, but since we'll spend some time with them, we'll have time to get into those later.
Hmm.
He's taken some of these, details that he's given to the dwarves in this story, and then expanded and written their entire. And I'm not sure if he may have even come up with the origin of dwarves already. I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah. I'm not sure if he
So,
has yet.
because
Yeah.
he is working on the greater legendarium for,
He
years
is,
while
but
he's doing this stuff, but never
his
in the never in the idea that this is going to be connected.
is connected. No, because I mean, get into the whole thing on why they're even named the Norse names to begin with, but from the Voluspa. But
Oh yeah,
his, that's a whole story in itself, right? And a very neat bit of retro that he does later, retconning that he does later. But the dwarfish characters that you see in certainly 1920s Silmarillion are kind of malevolent and not particularly fleshed out at all. They're kind of almost stand-in for orcs, and that changes quite a bit. Uh, I think in part prompted by The Hobbit. I think he needed to fit them in after in a different way.
yeah. All right, Graham. Just a little touch tonight of the Thane's book. I'm sure there'll be things later in this book that we are like. I'm gonna have to we'll have considerable time to do at the end. Uh,
Right.
Ending this episode after 2 hours, which is good, but sometimes he's going even longer.
I'm
So
sure they can. Yes, I can easily see this.
I
This
don't
was
think I
great.
really cut anything out tonight that I wanted to hit.
Oh, good, good.
Um,
Yeah.
this went very well, and thank you.
Thank
Um,
you. It was fantastic. I love to come back. Well, I am coming back at some
you
point,
will.
but yes, this was great.
Hobbits, thank you for joining us for episode 1 of Biblioventures The Hobbit. Graham, thank you for joining. You'll return in a few weeks. We'll figure out when
Yes.
that'll be. We have an idea now, but we're actually hoping to add another co-host.
Yeah.
But if we do, we don't, but we'll see. Next week, for episode 2, we'll meet Bert and William and Tom in chapter 2, Roast the Mutton. And Sarah Brown from Signum University will be our co-host. That is going to be
Hmm.
really exciting.
He is
Uh,
fantastic.
Thank you to all of you who have already made a donation to the Rosaback or become a member. We could not do these shows without your generous support. Your donations help us create more programs like this and also care for our collections. You could also become a member. Membership gives you early access and discounts to programs and courses. You can find out more at our website, rosenbach.org. Thank you all for watching the first episode. Spread the word. We'd like to have even more people watch it. That
Hmm.
would be great. I am Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach Museum and Library. May something Tookish wake up inside of all of you too. Thanks so much. Thanks, Graham. Good night, everybody.
Thanks.